We are back with working on the Nissan Gloria. Unfortunately, we only have about 1 week to finish this build, and as we found out in the last Gloria build video, the driver's side quarter panel is unfortunately not going to get here within 1 week. And I honestly wanted to wait to weld on the passenger side quarter panel until I had the driver's side quarter panel. That way I can make sure everything was in a line. But since I'm on such a time crunch, I don't have that luxury. So today we are going to start with installing that quarter panel. Luckily, we do have at least somewhat of a quarter panel to represent what a straight quarter panel would look like on the rear end. So that way we can at least align it to the best of our abilities. And there are some things we need to do before we just start welding this quarter panel on, such as trimming the final pieces off of the C-pillar here. And then we also need to spray weld through primer or some type of rust prevention within the chassis. In the last video, we went around every single plug weld and aligned everything correctly. The trunk pan is straight, frame rails are fully installed, wheel wells all done, so the chassis is good to go. This car just needs quarter panels now, which is pretty exciting. Well, and paint and body work and all that, but for the welding side of things, just needs quarter panels. Sounds easy, right? But yeah, we got to make sure all of this has a nice coat on it. I utilize Steel It. I've used this on my 240 rebuild, works great, so I'm going to use it again. Let's put a sticker on the inside and hope that we never have to see it again. I've let the weld through primer sit and dry for a little bit. Let's install the quarter panel, or I guess test fit the quarter panel. So then we can find out where we need to make a very last trim. We're gonna grab some vice grips here. That way we can clamp down the seams in the correct position. Now we do have an alignment hole, luckily, from the quarter panel here to the inner skin. So we need to try and line that one up. And then this side of the quarter panel basically hugs the wheel well, so it latches in there really nice. Then we need to hold the front of this tight as well. I don't know if I'm gonna have enough vice grips. I cannot take credit for this tip that I'm about to share with you guys. One of my friends, Mikey, who I hope to meet in person soon, told me this method that he uses for work. He's a body guy, so he does this stuff every day. Basically, he said clamp the new quarter panel along the old chassis quarter panel. So we have that done. It's nice and tight. And now you can see how this side fits over it, basically, right? And the front side is not gonna fit the seams correctly. That's because these are the same size, so they're not really designed to overlap like this. So what he suggested to do is, while it's clamped tight like this, cut both panels at the same time. So then you'll have a perfect line in between both of them. Plus, with it being this gapped out, I won't be able to accurately mount the rest of this quarter panel, because it's bumping it out. A tolerance that close is very important, especially when trying to line up a door jamb and all of these spot welds and seams on the rest of the quarter panel. Mikey, the guy that told me this tip, is also the guy that is willing to pull the dent on the 240 quarter panel. Just waiting for his availability. Fingers crossed. All right, but let's make a quick cut line. We have to be very cautious here not to cut too deep, because we don't want to cut this inner structure. We are only trying to cut the quarter panels that are on top. All right, so far so good. This side, yeah, I take full responsibility for messing that cut up. Oh, looks like we didn't go deep enough here. All right, here's the back to the Gloria. Did we not cut this one enough? All right, let's recheck that before we chop the rest off of there. Yeah, I guess we did not cut that one enough. Oh, it fell off. Okay, so now we have a perfect alignment here. Now we could prep this metal and weld it just like this, but personally, I want to put a backing plate to the quarter panel that we're putting on here. That way we have a base to weld to, and the weld will be recessed. That way when we grind down the weld, we're not losing structural rigidity. So let's take off this quarter panel now and make a backing plate. Here's the piece we trimmed off. Dang, I need to prep the metal next, but I just remembered I forgot to buy another wire wheel. Look what happened to this one. Dang, I just realized my lip fell off again. How do these zip ties break? So much to do, so little time. Now if you are going to buy one of these wire wheels, the ones that are knotted or twisted like this, always last longer, so I highly recommend to get that kind. This one was not in that style, probably why it burnt out so fast. I ended up putting a blanket down so I can flip this on its face, basically, so I wouldn't scratch the front of it while grinding. Now, this is the piece that we just cut off. This is obviously not going to be enough to use as overlap. So these are the two other pieces from the C-pillar that I used to trim them down. So what we're going to do is, okay, it goes this way. We're going to line this up like that. And we're going to chop off the ends of this, because if we have it here, that's going to gap it out where it fits onto the chassis. We only want this to be one layer here. Take this tape off. This backing plate might actually be too big, so I might have to trim it more, but let's just get a nice test fit to see how we're looking. Okay, it's actually really good. Now I thought I was gonna have to cut this piece in half down the middle, because I thought these end pieces were gonna bottom out to the edges, but since this piece was cut so high up, it actually fits in there quite snug. Let's prep this piece to be welded, basically grind off all the paint and adhesive. And we'll probably cut this thing in half too, just because this is a really big backing piece. We don't need it to be that big. Now this is the piece that we have to work with. Clamp this on here, tack weld it, and then test fit it onto the car. Put some rust prevention on there too. Oh, is this can out? I have our sliver clamped down onto the quarter panel. I did let it sit for a bit so the weld through primer is dry, but I wanted to grind away the weld through primer where I'm going to tack weld this piece on. That way we get a nice solid weld on there. Now we are ready to tack it. Turn the welder on, open the gas to the side. All right, and now let's set our pressure. Since we're welding outside, I like to set the CFH above 20, just because the wind and all that, you don't want it to affect your weld too much. Honestly, our ground clamp, we can just put right here. I have the heat setting down really low because this metal is thin and a low wire speed. Luckily, no burn throughs. That would have been a really bad time. Let's see how this overlap will look, or I guess underlap technically. Oh dude, we got that perfect. It's gonna be a breeze. A little close here, but it's still a perfect gap. And these we can obviously just grind smooth. Let's test fit this onto the car, possibly for the last time. Now when I was rebuilding my 240, I wrote down the current sub count on the inside of the chassis, so let's keep that theme going. Currently we are at 1, 2, 3, 5, 2, 6. Are you one of them? If not, you know where that button is. We'll write the date to 11/20/23. And if you're one of those 123,000, thank you. This whole build would not be possible without you. And if you're not one of those 123,000, thank you for giving me the chance. That means a lot to me as well. I almost forgot to spray our weld through primer on the inside here. I just went over it with the wire wheel to clean it up a little bit, so we have a nice mating surface. I've clamped the quarter panel in only 2 places, right here and inside the wheel arch. This is holding it to this panel on the inside here, not very snug, but I wanted to close the door first before I start tack welding this into position. I have not been able to latch this door the entirety of owning this car. Oh my gosh, that's insane. How satisfying. Dude, that lines up perfectly. I'm glad we ended up doing that lip method. This is gonna be really easy to weld all along the seam. And before I start welding this completely into place, I need to align the trunk again. That way I make sure I'm not too far over to the left or the right, so that when I put on the new quarter panel, I'm not screwed. This is great. This is a great start. And you can tell that the door doesn't hit, so it's not too high or too low. It's just actually in the correct spot. I was worried that that latch was actually broken. If you guys saw the earlier episodes when I first got the car, I didn't know if the door was busted because it literally didn't close all the way. But no, it was just because the quarter panel was so buckled. I'm pretty sure this is where we're gonna weld the quarter panel together. And we'll have to use a clamp here when I'm welding this seam, but Other than that, everything's lined up. Even got the wheel well all done. The gaps between the door are flush. Looks good. I'm so hyped on how this is turning out. Let's tack a few spots and then move some clamps around and then just fully weld this thing on. I also utilized a C-clamp here to align the trunk pan to that quarter panel. And that definitely helped it hold it in shape. There is a pretty decent gap right here between the trunk, but the whole trunk itself needs to be shifted over. I honestly think that the hinges that came off of that blue car are warped. They had a lot of play in them. It sits really close to this quarter panel. And actually when I got this half cut, the trunk was overlapped onto this quarter panel. That's why this corner is missing paint. And it doesn't even sit centered in the trunk here. So I think the hinges are bad. I might have to order new hinges. But the quarter panel itself is perfectly aligned. You can see the seam here too. Finally got the quarter panel all welded in. Now you guys got to see what Travis has done to his S14. I know you guys have seen this before on the channel, but the bay has just been redone.
It's gonna be crazy. I added a little flare to it this time.
About to see it for the first time in the sunlight.
Oh man. Hey, that looks good.
That does look good. It's glowing.
It is glowing. It's a different color, believe it or not, with the flake.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks the same,
really
dude.
yellow. Yeah. You can't really...
There's some flake in it. Okay, that's pretty sick.
I dig it.
I dig it a lot.
Thumbs up?
Thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. What do you guys think? Big banana? Big banana.
Yellow mellow.
And this is how the quarter panel turned out. Super nice. I grinded down all the spot welds already. That way it's ready to have glass mounted. This is ready for body filler. And this is ready to be epoxied. So yeah. But I did forget, however, to weld the tabs that hold in the gas tank right here. So I need to weld those really quick. After that, I think I'm ready to start thinking about some epoxy. I would obviously like to do that when this quarter panel is here, but it's not. We can just epoxy that quarter panel when that's done. But we still have the whole chassis we need to worry about. Nicely welded. We're gonna go to the store now and pick up some epoxy primer. Hopefully we'll be able to spray it. If not, that'll probably be the next video. Luckily we were able to grab this epoxy primer before the shop closed for the day. But before I spray it onto the car and onto the trunk pan, I want to smooth out some of these welds. It's not that these welds are bad by any means, but with the gas tank being on top of it, I don't want any high points. I did shave down some of them, but I just found another one that's a little bit too high for my liking, at least. I don't know, it could be okay. I might just be overthinking it. And the reason this epoxy is gonna be a good option is because it does have the hardener in the can. You have to like push this tab down and then it mixes everything all at once. And after we smooth down all of the high points, I want to go along and use a wire wheel to clean up the backside of everything that we welded, because we don't want this to be under an epoxy primer. And then after that, I'll have to try and clean up all of the metal specks from welding and grinding. I mean, just look at this. That's just metal dust. We really do not want to trap that under an epoxy. Although, would it still rust if it's covered in epoxy primer? I don't know. Not a chance I want to take though, especially being this deep into a build. Just want to do it once and be done with it. And the bottom of the car is also done. And I even went over this with a wire wheel already. So I really only have to worry about the stuff inside of the trunk pan. Yeah, these are all nice and clean. The chassis has been prepped. It is ready to be sprayed. I think I'm gonna start with spraying the inside here. I put down blankets to try and protect some overspray. I'm not too concerned about getting overspray on the quarter panel because obviously it's gonna need to be repainted. But then we'll start working our way back to the trunk area. It says to shake this can for 2 minutes Then use this red knob thing, turn the can upside down, and then smash this down. I think I used something like this before on my 240 rebuild. Okay, well I did it. I don't hear it though. It's supposed to make a noise? Well, the can definitely feels different shaking it after pressing the button. Basically that just releases the hardener. We'll do a quick test spray. Oh, this can is bad. No. Well, that sucks. We're gonna have to try again tomorrow. In the meantime, I do have these R32 GTR wheels that I really wanted to see if I can polish up. So let's try and do that. In case anyone is wondering, Travis let me borrow this product. It is metal polish cream. This is what it looks like. I've never used it before. I've never metal polished anything before. So we'll see how it turns out. I'm pretty excited though. I have a feeling this is gonna look sick. My first wipe down check. Okay, okay. That's almost a mirror. Before, after. Okay, that's gonna be hot. This is what about 35 minutes of polishing gets you. Looks a lot better, but I really don't have that much time right now, so we're gonna have to come back to this project. We have just made it back from Arnie's. That's where we pick up our paints. And luckily they exchanged this primer, epoxy primer, with no issues. This one you can actually hear the balls rattling around in there. The other one you couldn't hear that at all. And it's a new day, so we actually have some daylight to see what we're doing. All right, I guess we'll continue where we left off. Let's see if this one makes the noise when we push the button on the bottom. Oh, I heard it that time. Looks like it springs back up. The last one didn't do that. All right, let's give this one another test spray. Oh, looks like there's an adjustment on here. Min or max. Let's try min. Okay, it actually came out that time. Before I get any further in this, I need to put my mask on. Well, I ended up going through the entire can, and it was just enough to finish all the pieces that I needed to cover. Now we just need to wait for the paint to dry. But man, this looks crazy. It's so wild not seeing all the exposed metal. Even this seam looks great. Got the whole bottom coated. The next step is going to be seam sealing the chassis. We're going to be utilizing some 3M products, and I have the 3M gun to go with it. I also have a couple paint brushes, so I've also never seam sealed before, so this will be quite the learning process. I did watch a YouTube video on it, so hopefully we can get it done. And if you're curious what video I watched, it was actually 3M's video about this exact product. Thankfully, I have a good idea of how this is supposed to work. It's pretty simple. Basically, there's two parts to the seam sealer. I'm assuming one side of the tube is a hardener and the other side is a base. And it goes through this nozzle, which mixes it. And then you find a seam like this, and you just paint it on there. That's really all there is to it. You can get the OEM finish and wave it all crazy, or you can get a nice clean wipe, make it nice and smooth. I'll probably start with doing the bottom of the chassis so that the stuff I'm learning on looks ugly, and then hopefully we'll get the hang of it and work our way towards the inside here where it will be visible, although probably not with interior, now that I think about it. But still, you know, I want to do a good job. I'm just learning as I go. Trying my best. That's all we can do, right? But the chassis has to sit for at least another hour. So let's make a quick run to get some wheels. I forgot that I sold the wheels that came with the Gloria, so we have no wheels to put on it. What better wheels to use than some drift spares? I have a pair of 18-inch XT7s by work, and then a pair of G33/R33 wheels. These are the only wheels I had with tires on them. I'm really curious to see how drift wheels will look on a VIP car. What is that? I see pop-ups. A Fiero. Okay. Pretty random sighting. I thought it was a 240 at first. I'm so used to seeing 240s. Probably because I'm so used to seeing them in Omar's backyard. All right, let's see what we got to work with here. I've read the directions a little bit, even after watching that YouTube video. I'm shocked that the YouTube video didn't state that you need to scuff the prep surface. The directions do state to do that, and that makes perfect sense. That way the seam sealer has something to adhere to and grip to. So I'm gonna do a very light scuff with 120 grit here along everything I'm gonna seam seal. I'm not gonna seam seal this. That was just an example for an epoxy spot. But something I am gonna seam seal is along the wheel well here. That whole arch, we want to keep moisture out of there. And to my surprise, when I was taking the Gloria apart, there was no seam sealer on the bottom whatsoever. So here there's none here on the subframe brace. Trunk pan to, I guess, rear seat pan or gas tank pan, there was no seam sealer here, but there was some on the top layer. I'm gonna go ahead and put some on the bottom as well, because that just makes a lot more sense to me. There's gonna be a lot more moisture getting in from the bottom, I think at least. And then I'll probably go ahead and try and seam seal the back ends of some of these panels. Again, there wasn't any seam sealer there from the factory, but just out of peace of mind, I'm gonna do that on my end. I bought plenty of seam sealer, so I know for sure I'll have enough. And unfortunately, the only color they had was beige. I really wanted black. I guess we gotta just work with what we have here. Now, I have a feeling this is gonna be quite the messy situation, so I'm gonna be wearing some gloves. And I also have a few paintbrushes, and I'm not sure what this is for, a swab, I guess, to try and move around some of the seam sealer if needed. Let's load this into the gun. Well, that was pretty easy. Alright. Get some tension so it holds it in place. Don't want to squeeze it yet. Just enough that it's not going to fall out. We need a piece of cardboard or something to have this squirt onto. I don't want to spray it out here. This stuff is ready to rock when the time comes. Let's do that light scuff now. I'm definitely going to want to put seam sealer between the wheel arches and the floor pan. You can see the light bleeding through it. And I will say this was all seam sealed from the factory. Let's open this up. Still need the cap, so push that one out. Slide, oh wait. Is there a cap on this too? Oh no, okay. Slide that on, then put this back on there, okay. Pump it out, so you can see it mixing in there. That's crazy. It's a maze. Oh good, it's just gonna ooze out on us. Oh no. Now apparently this stuff hardens fast, so I'm gonna do one seam and then paint it in there. Oh yeah, that looks way better painted. Or I guess brushed, I'm not really painting. Okay, honestly, that was not nearly as bad as I thought it was gonna be. This is going by pretty smoothly. Let's work our way up top now. The bottom is completely done. Well, we didn't do the wheel wells, but under the chassis is done. It's got a nice seam on the wheel arch here. Oh yeah, that's a good one. I have to admit, this stuff is a lot more satisfying to apply than I was originally thinking. I think a good reason for this is I've taken off seam sealer many times on vehicles before, and it always sucks to remove. It's such a pain. It's so thick. Applying this is a lot easier than I thought. It's pretty satisfying too, honestly. So clean, so easy to do. This area was thick with seam sealer when we were taking the car apart, so I'm going to try and do just the same when putting it back together. I believe this is the last seam I need to apply seam sealer to. Man, that was the best seam yet. That's like factory fresh. This makes me excited to work on the 240 because I still need to seam seal that entire car. We need to let this car sit, have the seam sealer dry, have everything harden up. My plan for the next video is to hopefully install the subframe back into the car. That way we can make the car a roller, and maybe we'll even be able to install the fuel tank again. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Don't forget to drop a like on the video if you guys haven't already. Subscribe to see more. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.